everyone, welcome back to While You Were Cleaning. Today I have 10 different easy fall decor DIYs to share with you. And I believe that all of these could be done right around 10 minutes or under. So I'm really excited to share this video with you. I hope that it's helpful for you and that you're able to do some of these easy DIYs for your own home. If you do enjoy this video, please hit that like button. Please comment down below which is your favorite DIY from today's video, and please subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed so you can keep up to date on all of my latest videos. I can't wait to get started, so let's go. To start off this first DIY, you'll need a piece of cardboard. Now this is a 2-pack of scrapbook pieces, I think, and it just has these 2 cardboard pieces in there, so I'm going to use one of those. You'll also need a calendar, and I'm going to use a fall page from this calendar. It has 2 options here, Thankful and Blessed and Fall in Love. Now the Thankful and Blessed page was a little bit too thin, and you could see the calendar part of it through the white portions. So I'm going to use the black one instead, and I just used a glue stick to add glue around the outer portion of my calendar and my cardboard piece. And this cardboard piece is about a 1/2 inch bigger than my calendar page on each side. Next, I'll be using some of the pieces from this tumbling tower game, and you'll need 6 for each side of your calendar. And this may vary a little bit depending on how big your cardboard piece is, but here you can see how it looks with all those pieces laid out. And then I just used some super glue and added it to each end of each of my blocks so that I could glue them together. Now this doesn't hold these wooden blocks very well. Some wood glue might have worked a little bit better, but it does hold them in place well enough for me to be able to glue them down to the calendar board. I glued all of the blocks together in groups of 6, so I had 4 separate groups of 6. Here you can see how they look. They needed about 10 minutes to dry, and then I just used my hot glue gun to glue these around the edge of my calendar. Again, like I said, the super glue wasn't holding the blocks together super well, so you could just hot glue them down to the edge of the calendar if you want. I just wanted some glue in between the blocks as well. And you can see on the edge here, I kind of have to overlap them in each of the corners so that they fit perfectly around my board and calendar page. And here is how that first DIY turned out. I really love the way this one looks. I like how it can stand up on its own. You could also add a little hook on the back and hang it on the wall. And Dollar Tree, or any store really, has so many calendar pages to choose from for fall. For our next project, you'll need one of these wooden houses. I chose one that is shorter and wider, and I'm going to cover the back of this with some brown paper. So what I did was I turned the house and the paper over, and I traced around the house so I could get the outline of it. And then I had to go through and I had to trim off a little bit extra from each side of the paper and from the top part of the paper so that it would fit over the back part of my house. You could use any paper for this background, or you could also just paint the background of the house. That might be a little bit easier than trying to cut this paper to the right size. Next, I used a glue stick to add some glue to the paper and to the back of the house in order to glue my paper onto the inside of this house. Now I'm going to use some twine, and I'm going to cut it off so it's about a 1/2 inch bigger than the house on either side. And then I tied a knot in each end, and then about halfway down on each side of the house, I'm going to use just a little bit of hot glue to hold this twine in place. To finish off this project, I'm going to be using these decal letters and these wooden pumpkin stickers. I decided to spell out the word fall across 4 of these smallest wooden pumpkins, and I just used a little stick or my finger to rub these decals onto the wooden pumpkins. Now you can use a card or a little popsicle stick. You just want to make sure that you get down the edges of your letters because those don't always seem to get rubbed down as much, and so then they might peel off when you're trying to peel off the plastic piece. I pulled off the paper from the back of these stickers and then I placed them across this twine piece. Now the sticker does hold them down. You may want to add some glue also. And then at the top of my little house, I'm going to add the word welcome. And I just want to make sure that I have this centered. So I started with my center letter, which is the C, and I made sure that I placed that straight down from the peak of my house. And then I just worked out from each side of the word so that it stayed centered. You can add any wording you like to this house. I think it would also look nice saying hello fall instead of welcome fall. And here is how DIY number 2 turned out. I really like this one. It is very simple to put together and I really think that these decal letters are very easy to use. For DIY number 3, we'll be putting together a pillow using some fabric placemats. And then I'm going to, instead of sewing these this time around, I'm going to try out this Fabric Fusion. This tiny tube was plenty to do this project. So to start off, you're going to put your first placemat, the finished side down, and you're putting your 2 wrong or unfinished sides of your placemats together. I then used the Fabric Fusion right along the edge of the bottom placemat, and then I also added some hot glue because I wanted to make sure that these stayed together long enough for the Fabric Fusion to dry. I went all along the outside edge with the Fabric Fusion and then the hot glue, and then I just made sure that I left one of the edges open so that I could add the stuffing. It doesn't really matter where you leave the opening or how big it is, just leave it big enough so that you can get your hand inside to add some stuffing. And then I added several handfuls of stuffing to the inside of this pillow. I didn't overstuff it because I was worried about pushing on the seams, but I added just enough. Once you're finished stuffing your pillow, you can add some of the Fabric Fusion and the hot glue along the opening that you had left, and then press it down in place and hold it for just a little bit until the hot glue dries. And here is how that third DIY turned out. I really love this pillow. You could add some extra ones to your living room or different areas of your home, and it was so simple to put together. For project number 4, I'm going to be using these mini buckets, and these come in a 4-pack. I'll be spray painting these with this Rust-Oleum spray paint. The finish is satin and the color is cinnamon, so it's kind of a deeper rust orange color. And then I removed the handles from these buckets and I spread them out on my cardboard so that I could spray paint them. I gave these one really good coat and then I flipped them over and got the top of them as well. And then I'll be using some different florals. I have some flowers, some cotton stems, some willow, and some pumpkin picks. And I chopped off these so that the stems on all of them were about 2 or 3 inches long. And then I'm just going to group them together, just one of each, and I used a piece of wire and twisted it around those stems to hold them together so they wouldn't fall out of the buckets. And here's how that 4th DIY turned out. They're just tiny little accent pieces, and here I laid them out along with some other DIYs along the center of my dining room table, and I really like how simple these are. Also, they do have that little jack-o'-lantern face on one side of them, but you can just turn that away. It isn't super noticeable with the color paint that I used. For project number 5, I used a wooden arrow, and then I wanted to add some pumpkins to this, so I decided to use some of these window clings. And so I'm going to be using this pair of pumpkins that I found on here, and then I'll also be using some of these decal letters. I'm going to start off this by gluing on this pair of pumpkins to the wooden arrow, and I just used a glue stick to do that. So I added some glue to the wood and to the window cling to hold it in place. And lastly, I just want to add the word pumpkins with my decal letters. So I'm going to start in the center again to make sure that my word is centered across the sign. And then I also wanted to let you know that once you stick these letters down onto that window cling, they stick and they are not going to move, so make sure you put them exactly where you want them. DIY number 6 is going to be a small wreath. You'll need a wreath form, and then you'll need 2 of these foxtail bushes, 2 of these willow branches, and then you'll also need 2 of these wheat ones. And I picked 2 different colors of each of these different kinds, and then I just clipped them off from their main bushes right at the ends of their stems, and then I'm going to slide them in place on this grapevine wreath. I did one color at a time and just worked my way around the wreath, and I really love how these grapevine wreaths and the willow wreaths that are a little bit lighter color that Dollar Tree has, I like how you can just slide your branches right into them and it holds them in place and you don't have to use any glue. And you can use either a grapevine or a willow wreath for this project. You don't have to use the grapevine one. They also have some larger wreaths of both of them. This is one of the smaller ones. So you can use a larger one, you'll just need more of the florals to complete it. I just continued adding each of my florals, and lastly I'm just going to put in my wheat pieces, and as you can see I just did one color, went all the way around the wreath, and then came back and finished by doing the second color and going all the way around the wreath with that one. I'm really hoping to next year be able to find enough of these florals and a larger grapevine wreath form so that I can make this wreath in a larger version. I think it would look so nice in a 16 or 18-inch wreath hung on a front door or on a wall. And here is how DIY number 6 turned out. I just leaned it up on a shelf here. You can hang it on a wall. You could also use it as a centerpiece on a table, maybe put a pumpkin or a candle in the center of it. Next, I wanted to decorate some candle holders, so I picked up these round ones, and then I also grabbed some of these vanilla candles, but I end up not using those. I also got some smaller leaves. I wanted to use the burlap ones from that package, and then a package that had some larger leaves in it as well, and then lastly some willow branches and some twine. First off, I cut apart some of these willow branches for each of my candle holders. I cut each of the longer branches in half, and then I went back through and I cut these a little bit shorter so that they weren't sticking up so far off the top of my candle holder. It's at this point that I decided that I wasn't going to be lighting these candles because the willow branches just stick over the top of the holder a little bit too far. You can get some taller ones if you want to light your candles. And then I added 2 larger leaves behind the willow branches and then a burlap leaf in front, and I glued them all together just right at the bottom. Next, I cut off a piece of twine that could wrap around my glass container 3 times, and then I trimmed off any excess from the bottom of my group of leaves and willow, and I wrapped the twine around those leaves, holding them to the side of the glass container, and then I tied a bow. And here's how those turned out. I decided to use a little electric tea light inside of this instead. You could use a real candle if you got a taller glass container. And I grouped these along with some other DIYs from today's video and some other Dollar Tree products along the center of my table to put together a fall centerpiece. For this next project, you'll need one of these large foam pumpkins. You'll want to remove the stem and then make the hole at the top a little bit larger. Then you can paint it white. And then you'll be using some of this creepy cloth fabric, which you can get in a few different colors from Dollar Tree, and then a wood piece to use as a stem. I unfolded this fabric and then refolded it so that it was 4 layers of fabric thick, if that makes sense. And then I set my pumpkin down in the center of it and I glued down the 2 shortest sides first. And then I folded over the fabric a little bit and stuffed it down into the center of the pumpkin and just worked my way around the pumpkin doing this. And I really love the texture that this creepy cloth gives to the outside of this pumpkin. Next, you'll add some hot glue around that hole and then put the stem in place. And here is how DIY number 8 turned out. I really love the texture of this one. It looks amazing, and I think it would look really good in some of the other colors of creepy cloth that Dollar Tree has out as well. I did do a DIY like this one recently, and it was in a pumpkin DIY video with all Dollar Tree pumpkins. This is what that one looks like. I will link the video up above for you so you can go see how I put this one together and what products I used to make it. I also wanted to share this DIY with you as well because it is also very simple to put together. I use the same decals on here that I've used throughout this video, and you can also find this DIY in that linked video. For the next project, you'll need one of these round wooden pieces, and then you'll need some wooden beads. I'm going to use these that I found in the hair section at Dollar Tree. You'll also need some twine, and then I'll be using one of these thankful words. You could also use some decal letters. So what we're going to do first is string a bunch of these beads onto our twine. I did use 2 whole packages of beads on this project, and I tied a knot in the end of this twine to make it a little bit easier to go through the center of the beads, but it was still kind of hard to get through, so I used this little wooden stick. You could use a skewer or a toothpick just to help push the twine through the center of the beads. We are going to be tying this strand of beads onto that wooden piece. So you'll also need to cut the piece of twine off of the wooden piece. Make sure that you keep 3 beads for another part of the project, and then you can tie off the end of your strand. Once the end of your strand is tied off, you can tie the other end of it to that wooden piece through the hole. Next, I'm going to put together a tassel using some of this twine. So I used about a 4-inch cardboard piece to wrap this twine around. It's actually the cardboard from the inside of one of those hair bead packages, and I just folded it in half. And then you'll need to tie off the top of your tassel. I used about an 8-inch piece of twine to do this. And then once you have the top tied off, you can cut apart the looped side on the opposite side of where you tied your tassel. Next, you'll take some of the twine and you'll wrap it tightly around the top of your tassel about 1 inch down. Wrap it around about 5 or 6 times and then tie that off in a knot. And then I trimmed off the bottom of my tassel so it was about 4 inches long when it was complete. Next, I strung on those 3 remaining beads to the top of my tassel and I tied it off in a knot. Once you get this tied nice and tight, I took that remaining twine piece there and I fed it back down through the beads so it came out the other side where the tassel was, and then I cut that off. And then I added some hot glue to the end of the top bead and I placed it on my wooden piece straight across from where my other beads are tied on, and I just added one of these thankful stickers to the center. And here is finished project number 9. It is probably my favorite DIY from this video. I really love the natural wooden and earth tone colors of this project. The last project for today I shared in a recent leaf DIY video, and I will link that above for you. And I used these burlap leaves from Dollar Tree. These have a metal stem on them, so I just folded it over a piece of twine to create a garland for the front of my fireplace. And I really love the way that this one turned out, and it is so simple to put together. Alright, so that is everything that I have to share with you in today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed these DIYs and that they're easy for you to recreate. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and my youngest wants to say bye, and we will see you next time.